City of Salem, the City Council Committee on Administration and Finance, co-posted with the Committee of the Whole, met in the council chambers on Tuesday, March 4th at 6 p.m. for the purpose of discussing the matters of the mayor's compensation per Chapter 2, Section 142, that during the first 3 months of the City Council's biennial organization, the matter of the mayor's compensation should be reviewed and the recommendation reported to the City Council no later than the first meeting in April. And also the matter of the school committee compensation per Chapter 2, Article 4, Division 11, the school committee, Section 956, compensation of members, and that the recommendation be reported to the City Council no later than the first meeting in May. Of attendance from the Administration and Finance Committee, we have Councilors Davis, Councilor Harvey, Councilor Stott, and Councilor Watson-Belt. From the Committee of the Whole, we have Councilor Cohen, Councilor Gerslow, and Councilor Marcillo. Also joining us tonight, we have Anna Friedman, our Finance Director, and Lisa Camarada, our Human Resources Director. Welcome, everyone. For some history here, along with a comparison we have of mayoral compensations in neighboring cities and towns, I'll give some history here for where the salary is now and where it was previously. In January of 2019, the mayor's salary was raised from $120,000 to $150,000. And it was reviewed again in 2022 with no change. For the record, the council pay is 10% of the mayor's salary, and the school committee pays 8% of the mayor's salary. And for some history on the school committee, their compensation was reviewed in April of 2023. It was during that review, the council amended our ordinance to starting January 1st of 2024, members of the school committee, except the mayor, would receive 8% of the mayor's salary and compensation. And we also changed the status from a stipend to a salary. And a little more history there. The school committee compensation in 2017 was $4,500 was an amount. And then in 2018, it was $8,500. So in case that information is helpful. And also, well, thank you. I've been notified that we have attendee. Councilor Varela is trying to join us on Zoom. And so bear with me to promote to panelist here. Okay. And what's interesting here is that, yeah, so I did that.
Promote to panelist.
I did, and then it was interesting. It says
decline. Oh,
to be promoted to panelist.
you just allow him to speak then. Yeah. Just start there.
Councilor Varela, can you hear us?
Now I can. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, and also for consideration tonight, we could make a recommendation that the school committee review requirement be removed from our ordinance if we wanted to, since their compensation is tied to the mayor's compensation like the council is, which is not reviewed. We have a little inconsistency that exists here because, yeah, the council is not reviewed and the school committee is. I think that might have been based back when they were a flat amount and not a percent. So now they would get raises as the mayor's compensation if and when that is raised. Or when they both can be reviewed, the council and the school committee. But that's, I'm just throwing that out there for consideration by the council tonight. Also, for context, the cost of living increase is currently generally considered at 3%. If that's of interest as well. Thank you. So I guess I'll start Yes, councilors. Lisa Camerata, do you want to offer anything to start us off? Okay, great. Thank you.
Can I move this up a little bit? It's kind of cool. Only because I'm usually sitting down for my budget hearing. So thank you all for inviting me here. Actually, Councilor Merkel, you took all my thunder because I had all my notes on the history of what happened over the last several years for you all. So yeah, no, I'm very happy to be here. This is something we do on, well, not an annual basis, but we do it frequently for existing staff, and we're trying to look at compensation or if we're bringing on a new hire. So it is definitely, sure. So I'm sorry about that. So it's definitely fitting, of course, that we would do this type of survey. It's interesting how before we started, a couple of the councils and I were talking about how some of this information doesn't actually, I want to say match or agree with what's either publicized in the newspaper or even on any type of media. You know, you hear certain, crazy salaries of 400,000, I think we were talking about in another municipality. I would tell you that we definitely do our due diligence. We make phone calls. If I can't get the information from a phone call, we go on the municipality's website. We scour their budget. I can just tell you that some of this information is not easily attainable. We were met with some responses of, you need to put in a FOIA request or we need something in writing. And what I want to say is, you've seen our budget. I mean, Anna and I have talked about this, right? Our budget is so transparent. You can find anyone when they started, how long they've been here, what their seniority is, when their longevity, whatever, their step increases. So some of this information was just not as easily attainable as I would have liked it. But we dug, we pushed, and we got what I think is pretty comprehensive and quite accurate, although I guess I'm missing something from one municipality, but I think that would actually throw this entire average off, so maybe it's better that it's actually not there. Interestingly, what we try to do is we get the base. So I started out here. Actually, I'll look at this, what you have in front of you. I have it alphabetical. I did think about maybe sorting it a different way by population, but I just think alphabetical is sort of how I operate. And sometimes it's just, when you're looking for something, then you can just go find it because you know where it'll be alphabet wise. So we do the municipality, we do their population, and then we do what we call the mayoral base, which is just the actual base salary. And then if there's any kind of a stipend or something else added into that. If you look at the one I did a couple of years ago, I think the last time we looked at this was in 2019. There were quite a few more stipends, and I think one municipality actually put in like 16% into the town manager's deferred compensation plan, and we would itemize that. So we use that as a reference when we made all these phone calls this year, and some of them either just said that doesn't happen anymore, you need to talk to a different department. So I didn't include them. I just put in what we were able to verify. So if you were to look at something we did a couple of years ago, it's honestly not for lack of trying. And I just want to let you know that we did everything we could to try to get something as comprehensive and representative of what's happening with all of these communities. So that's what the stipend line is there. You'll see that's like the fourth column in. And then the reason for what the stipend, why there is an additional stipend, like you'll see just the first one, there's $2,562.25. It's 1.25% of the salary for longevity on the, I think it's aren't supposed to city or a town, I think a town, the town manager's salary. And so that's how we get, then I just combine those two totals and then we put over on the right-hand side whether or not it's a gateway city. And you'll see further down under comment, if I wasn't able to get the information, we grabbed it from the city budget online. But if there are things buried or things someplace else, or they're not a tangible stipend, it's not easy for us to find it. I will also comment, there are some like vehicle usage. That doesn't, I mean, it has what's called non-cash compensation. So there is that amount is taxed, but it doesn't go to actual cash compensation. So that's why if there's a vehicle usage, you won't see sort of a total because it isn't tangible money. It's just the value of it. But the numbers are kind of all over the place, as you'll see. I mean, there's like, I think the lowest is 100,000. And then I think there's one in there that goes up to 254, which is Chelsea, which we think might actually be even higher. So there is a way to sort of sort through this and take out some of the highs and the lows. I did a little bit of that and it still brings the average in like a little over 150 to 155,000. And then you'll see that our mayor down in Salem at the bottom, right now the mayor is at 150, the base, and the actual total compensation is 150. And I'm not trying to correct you, Councilor Merkel, but the graduated, it went from 120 and then it went to 135 and then jumped to 150. I don't know if so there has been a thought process to increase this over the last few years. And then you also mentioned the school committee. That information is not as easy to get either. And I don't, like, as I said before, I mean, this is all public record. It's my little side note, I guess, just because I can't understand why we shouldn't be able just to pick up the phone and get it. But in Lynn, I just called some of our local communities here. Lynn is $9,600 a year. And in Beverly, it's $8,000 a year, and it's run through payroll, and they're eligible for benefits. Which, Councilor Merkel, you did mention is that our school committee members now are run through the payroll as opposed to what's called a stipend for expenses. Which just we decided internally that it was better to have it running through payroll, where the appropriate deductions are taken. They're paying into the 7.5% mandatory OBRA because they're not paying into the retirement system because they're considered part-time employees, but they were determined eligible for benefits when all those changes took place.
Thank you. This was a great, a very thorough assessment of all the salary comparisons. You had a lot of information here for us to look at, and it's very much appreciated and very helpful. And yeah, those changes we made were I thought were great, for the school committee, getting them off a stipend. And
just makes sense. I mean, they're not vendors. I mean, certainly our finance director could comment on that as well, but they're not vendors. They're considered employees.
So that was a terrific change. Any questions from the council? Councilor Stott?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. Thank you for all the prep and data for the meeting. I just want to comment that I also 100% agree with your comments about transparency. So thank you to you, and thank you to Anna for your great work during the budget season. It's wild to me that it's so hard to find this information. And I think I did share a recent article from a local city to Councilor Merkel this morning on this very topic. And I do appreciate, and I have some confidence that we know our budget, and that is because of the transparency that we have here. So just a comment on that. My one question, I mean, looking at these numbers as every time, really what jumps out at me is some of them are really just wildly all over the place. But there is definitely kind of that middle ground, which we do, or average or mean, or whatever the math term is, that we do seem to fall into in Salem. Of course, I think the Salem job as a mayor has its own challenges and specialties. It's different than other cities and towns, but I also think that every city and town could probably make a claim for that as well. One question I did have just in regards to logistics of things, I noticed we obviously have the vehicle usage stipend. There's not like an amount attuned to that, because I'm assuming it goes through city budgets, but other municipalities have a travel expense. And I do know that the mayor goes to conferences and visits other. Do we have any sort of expense line, do you know, in regard to that? But it just jumped out at me that I'm wondering if that would be.
So I'm guessing, I mean, if there is travel, I'm assuming it works the same way as in other departments, that it's always a reimbursement to go somewhere, right? So the employee, and in this case would be the mayor, registers for it, and then pays for it, and then goes and then gets reimbursed. I don't think that's any different.
Okay, and it could be something that I chalk up to, like, remember when budget season comes up, to ask that question to the mayor, how that is accounted for, because I don't think that should be something that should be coming out of pocket. That should be provided by the city if they're city-related expenses, travel expenses. Okay, so my only other comment is I fully agree with Chair Merkel that the housekeeping item of the council and school committee reviews, either we do all three at once, where we review the mayor's salary, and with that also, do we keep council at 10% or whatever percentage and school committee at whatever percentage, or just review the mayor's salary on the regular cadence? I think just doing the school committee is a little odd, and not doing council, but I think we could either do both or do neither. I don't really have a preference on that, but I think cleaning that up to make it a little more equal, and consistency would make sense. That's really all I have for comments now. I'll lastly say I do agree with the cost of living, which would be, I believe it was 3%. To just get, I mean, looking at the other municipalities, you can see some of them are flat rates. So they probably sat in the meeting and said, we want to pay 150,000 or 140. And some are like $688.24. And they're probably following the cost of living increases every year. So I do think that it shouldn't be a stagnant rate. It should be at least a 3%. If we do this every 2 years, maybe a 3% this year, 3% next year. So it kind of keeps going and we don't have those big jumps as we've had in the past, but open to the committee's thoughts on that.
Thank you. Any other counselors? Councilor Cohen?
Thank you, Chair Merkel, not being a member of the committee. Two things. Regarding the school committee, I do not think that the city council should be weighing in anymore. I think we did our diligence and turned them into employees and assigned the rate. But it's really important. They're autonomous from us. I do not believe that we should be deciding on their salary. And I don't believe we should actually be changing ours because, it's going to affect our personal pay. My view on this year's budget is that because of all the stresses on the budget from the problem with the, potential loss of funds from the feds and the fact that most every department is going to face level funding or worse and not being able to give people raises. I hope that this committee will not vote to change the mayor's compensation at all. I think this year it should stay the same and then can be reviewed in the event that the budget has some kind of increase in the future.
Thank you. Any other counselors? Councilor Harvey?
Thank you, Chair. I kind of agree with Councilor Cohen on this. I agree that, as far as the school committee and us, if it's at a percentage, I don't really see the reason to talk about it and go over it. It's just, it is what it is. And as far as increasing compensation, I think we have too many departments that aren't fully staffed. And part of the reason is because the city of Salem's not offering a large enough compensation compared to other municipalities. And I just feel that, we need to work on getting our departments fully staffed and our department heads and our employees up to snuff with what's going on around other communities near Salem and around the city. So that's where I agree with Councilor Cohen. I think it should stay the same for now.
Thank you. Councilor Davis?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I appreciate the budget being brought up. It seems like we need to think about this conversation tonight in that context. And, I think there's a lot of things that we would like to do, should do, to improve the lives of residents in Salem. And I think there's going to be a lot of pushback, and then there's going to be a lot of kind of uphill battles that won't be possible because of the budget implications. So I want to be cognizant of that. And I also want to, just bring up, in conversations with our city solicitor, we have almost 150 employees working for the city of Salem that make between $15 and $19 an hour. So if this is something that we do go forward with, if we can, in a year with really serious budget concerns, raise the salary of, an employee making under $50,000, I hope that we can do the same for those making what is really not a livable wage in Salem. No one can live off of $50 an hour. So I just want to kind of put it in that perspective as well and offer that.
Thank you. Councilor Varela?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. Now, being a member of the committee, I just got one comment. And, I understand that we're going to be heading into, level funding our departments. We don't know what's going to happen when it comes to what kind of allocation of funds we'll get from the federal government. But however, I know over the last couple of years, we have not voted for an increase for the mayor. But at this time, I do feel that it would be appropriate to reflect cost of living increase on this salary, only because if we continue to not raise the salary of the mayor, I believe in, let's say 2 to 6 years from now, we're going to have a huge increase if that's going to happen. So I think it's really reasonable that we continue with a cost of increase. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Varela. Let me just turn that. Yes, I'll offer an opinion here as well. I'm comfortable with not reviewing either the school, making a recommendation to not review either the school committee or suggest reviewing the council compensation moving forward. I think that that's consistent, and any increases would be tied to any increase we give to the mayor at any point. It is interesting how all over the place the other compensations are. And I think it's more than reasonable to think about the challenges, in Salem, haunted happenings, the crowds we have, and we definitely have a unique community with its unique challenges here. And I do see, in considering that it has been several years since there's been an increase, I always like to look at the best financial practice, that we have incremental increases as opposed to, and with fees or anything, that something is not changed for many years, then all of a sudden it's considerably behind. And as Councilor Varela said, then you're in a position where a huge change is needed. So I do appreciate that that salaries, throughout the city and across the board need to be looked at mindfully. But I support seeing more cost of living, small incremental increases for the mayor's salary and anyone's salary. So we keep up, and then we're not in a position where we've fallen behind and then all of a sudden have to find some really large increase to make. I think any salary should go up if it's been several years since it's been touched in any capacity at all. Councilor Rosillo.
Thank you, Chair. If I just look at the numbers here, and I kind of circled the communities that had a like population. Again, Salem isn't like any other community, but population-wise, even if you go plus or minus 10,000, Salem is at the high end if you exclude Everett and Chelsea, who are at the highest end of this whole list. Everyone else is below 150. I know what you're saying about small increments. I just feel like this year is tough. It's going to be tough, and raising the mayor's salary raises all of our salaries, raises the school committee salaries, and you add it all up, and it's not a huge amount, but we could probably use that money elsewhere. That's, I don't know. We're kind of in this conundrum of when is the best time to raise it. And to me, the best time to raise it is when the other like communities show that they're up there also. And they're just not yet. So we seem to be right where it should be, according to these numbers. Thanks.
Councilor Watson-Felt.
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I did the same math over here myself, Councilor Marcillo, and even including the top two, the average is just over 152,000. So we're sort of right in there. I am conflicted about the cost of living increase, specifically because I know the mayor did his best to ensure everyone else got a cost of living increase this year. And he and Anna have worked so diligently on the budget and are such incredible, responsible fiscal caretakers of the city. And I do think that it is important to have compensation that is competitive across the board, right? So I am also conflicted because I take Councillor Davis's comments really to heart around the the hourly wages that we're paying certain members of our staff and teams that are out there doing the work every day. So I also have been in this seat, right? The couple of times we've had to make some really big decisions around leaps because we've not done incremental increases. And they feel really hard and they feel a little both responsible and irresponsible simultaneously because those increases hurt the bottom line just at a larger scale, right? So I'm sitting with it. I'm a little undecided. I could be convinced either way on this one this year, but I do think Salem, I do have to say, even at 152 as the average, including the top two in the population ranges between 40,000 and 50,000, which was the averages that I just quickly pulled. Salem has the additional burden of the increase, the tourism, the increased activity around the year, the security concerns, all of those things that really make our mayor specialized in a really unique way. And so, for $3,000, I could be convinced this year. I don't know. I'm sitting with it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jerslow.
Thank you, Councillor Merkel. Not being a member of the committee, I'm wondering if anybody knows the price of the vehicle usage. Has anybody ever averaged that out? Lisa? It costs the city to have the car and, sorry, like what it costs the city to have a car. Do they get free gas? The insurance, they don't pay the insurance on the car. That's almost like a stipend, I would think, to have a car and have the usage like free gas. Have to pay for the car. You have to pay for insurance, have to pay for gas. I'm sure they gas up at the city pump.
Right.
I'm just thinking, has anybody ever done how much that actually costs the city? And that could be kind of considered a stipend to the job to have a free car and use of it. Are they only limited to city limits, or can they use it on weekends, to go up a family trip in New Hampshire, or?
Well, I guess on a personal note, I would say it's probably highly unlikely. I mean, public safety clearly can take their vehicles pretty much anywhere they want. As long as I've been here, I don't know that our mayor has used the city vehicle for that type of work or that type of usage. I don't believe so. I can do a little more research on that for you. I don't have that exact figure. I don't think it's a lot. It's a number that's actually figured out by the IRS, and we just plug some numbers in, but it's the vehicle usage for, back and forth to work and to go to maybe a meeting in another municipality if a family's taking a vacation to New York or
I'm just saying, like, what's the cost of the car to the city budget to buy a car for the mayor, to gas the car, for your insurance, so if you put a round number on it, 10,000, that could be considered like a stipend.
Yeah, I don't know what.
Job, yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I don't know that it's that high. I don't know the cost of our insurances. We have so many vehicles, citywide, as far as, the vehicles for DPW and public safety and all of that, right? So I really don't know what that number is.
Okay. Because not all the municipalities have that.
No, that they actually,
number.
Yeah, that they actually told us that they have, right? Yeah, I don't have that number. I can certainly look into it. Sorry.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's fine. No, you're fine.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And also, there would be many vehicles that, as Lisa Camarada said, are issued in the city. And I believe, too, then there's also reimbursement for travel if someone's using their own car for city business. So that's kind of a broad, kind of a broader conversation, in that there's a lot of city issued vehicles and then reimbursement for, travel time for work and such. And I couldn't imagine that these other communities, if they're not providing a car, that the mayors, as they travel for business and work, there wouldn't be some kind of reimbursement. And we have that as well, Lisa, correct?
Yes, we do have reimbursement. So, for example, if someone takes their own vehicle to a training in, say, Burlington, Mass, or something down, western part of the state for the day, that kind of thing, they can put in for reimbursement for mileage, which is usually the IRS rate, and that changes every year, of course.
Yes, thank you. So we are accommodating transportation for,
Yes.
for city work.
Yes.
In general. Okay. Thank you for that clarity. Councillor Cohen?
Thank you, Chair Merkel, not being a member of the committee. So I guess I don't know as much about all the other communities as some other people here, because they all have challenges. Chelsea is by far the smallest city in Massachusetts at 2.5 square miles. There's really huge increase in population that's created a lot of infrastructure challenges. Somerville is 81,000 people in 3 square mile. Leominster, which has about the same population that we do, with a mayor that makes 105,000, if people might remember, experienced incredible climate issues this year. So many people were really, dislocated. Springfield has a much bigger population than we do, 4 times bigger, 175,000 compensation. I used to work out there when they experienced really the most massive tornadoes in the history of New England, where 20% of homes were destroyed. Fitchburg is a similar sized city to us, with a mayor who makes 30,000 less. It's been a very depressed mill town. I believe that these, mayors, just like all mayors, are struggling to do the best they can for their city. We basically affect a couple of salaries, the city clerk, the mayor, and, to Councilor Harvey's point, we're not really evaluating at this meeting before we have our budget season. All the employees that work in Salem, we did have 5 union contracts that came up. So teachers and some other people have more competitive wages than they had before. But I'm really concerned about what's going to happen with our budget this year. And I don't see this like big gap, like all of a sudden we're anticipating Salem is going to be in a place in 7 years where we need to increase the salary, because we don't know what the landscape is going to be in 7 years for DPS workers or anyone else. And so I just think it's irresponsible and really not reflective of all the employees of the municipality to just say, okay, it's a cost of living increase, so let's give the mayor a cost of living increase. I think, there are other people in the city who make more money than the mayor, and that happens in virtually every other, community and federally, everything else, the state level. I just think that, to Councilor Marcilla's point, just taking a pause this year is not inhibiting us from making a decision when we have a better certainty of what's going to happen with our funding for the city.
Thank you. I think I saw Councillor Stott next.
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I think definitely from what we're hearing and saying in this conversation is these salaries are all over the place. And nobody gets into the business of being a mayor for the highest salary. A CEO of a company, a president of a company with thousands of employees does not make $150,000 a year. And essentially, that's the mayor's job. As mentioned, he has many employees under him that make a lot more than him. Or I'm sorry, I shouldn't say him, but the mayor has many employees under them that have higher salaries than them. They're a municipal worker. They get into it for the desire to be a mayor. As someone that has worked in the corporate world for too long, I've definitely heard that line that we're not making money this year, so no one's getting raises. And that just kind of perpetuates and piles on top of each other. And it's very easy to do in the corporate world. There are no unions. There's no, it's a very different environment. And it can be piled on. And I don't want us to get in at least a minimum cost of living scenario increase. If we pause this year, there's no review next year. It's every 2 years during a non-election cycle. So there's no review next year. It would be in a year from then, and then it would be essentially 3 years because it doesn't start until the next year. So any review we do now or change we do now does not start until next year. Which is why we do the review during the election cycle, which is why we do not actually affect our salaries, because there's no saying that we're going to be sitting in these seats next year. So we are not affecting our salary. We're not affecting the current mayor's salary. And we're not affecting this year. So we need to think really long term, I think, with this. I totally agree with the budget constraints. We have no idea what's going to come down from the federal government, but we have no idea what's going to happen in 3 years or 4 years or 8 years. We can continue to be in this boat. And we need to figure out how to keep that boat afloat and keep good candidates and qualified people running our city. And if we do not, as much as mayors get into the desire to be a mayor for the love of it, we still need to, get those qualified candidates that know what it's like to run a business with thousands of employees and create that budget. Finally, I do have like a budget question. Say we do a cost of living increase, maybe even hold it off a year or this year, 3%, 150, that's $4,500. If the mayor didn't want to apply that to his salary in the budget, the mayor sets the budget. Does he have the ability to do that? Or to provide the increase to someone else or apply it in his department differently? I mean,
it may be a legal question, but I'm not sure why not. The funding could be allocated, but it may be a question for a city solicitor, but if the funds need to be appropriated to accommodate, should the mayor be taking the full salary, then it would be applied in that budget line, but it may be a legal question whether or not he would then be able to decline a portion of that.
Thank you. I was just curious. I mean, if we have major budget concerns, if the mayor has major budget concerns and is like, don't give me any more, it's like, well, we still keep with the consistency cost of living. Like the mayor is working so hard to make sure all of the employees for the city of Salem also have as well. We need to look at this as the mayor is a city employee as well. So those are my comments on the mayor's employee. For the school committee compensation matter, I agree. It sounds like we're in consensus that we close out the review for this year, say no recommendation and change, and then also recommend a second order to revise the ordinance to strike that line that says, and council reviews every 2 years. I'll look that up while we're continuing to talk.
Thank you. I'll also add too, sadly, I can't see over the next several years that we will have less challenging budget constraints, as we take a look at our annual budgets every year. I think they'll certainly continue to be challenging in that vein. I also would support cost of living that wouldn't be in effect until next January. for the 3%, just to start doing an incremental, responsibly, path moving forward. So, Councillor Watson-Felt, I think, was next, and then I think I saw Councillor.
Thank you, Chair Merkel. Just a budget question. Anna, could you remind me what the base cost of living increase was for the budget across the board last year? Was it 2.5%? It was 2.5. So that's also an option, right? So from COL perspective, we could say we're comfortable with 2.5, or, it doesn't have to be 3 just because 3 is just a general regional average. Go ahead. Oh, Anna's got something else to say.
Ultimately ended up being 3.
Oh, it did. Equally across the board.
Yep. And the non-union employees received 3%, and then the union contracts that were settled on the city side, those were 3% COLAs for each of those contracts thus far as well.
So equal 3 across for this current fiscal year. Great. Thank you.
Yes, I had asked about that as well. Yeah, because I had thought 2.5, and then they had said ended up 3. Councilor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to what Councilor Cohen was saying, every city is unique in its own way. But, and I know everybody brought up, we have haunted happenings, we have this, we have that. But when you really look at the big picture, we have employees that work within the city that are out there a lot more than the mayor is with the cleanup and setting up and all this other stuff that, if you look, this is why it's kind of hard for me, is because all we have in front of us is what the mayors are getting paid. We don't have a cost comparison to what other municipalities' employees are getting paid. So I don't feel comfortable saying yes to this when knowing that there's a lack of salary or wages, I should say, for people that actually, are out there doing the manual labor to maintain our city. And again, with the department heads, they're in charge of these people that are out there doing it. I just feel that there's that all needs to be looked at before we can sit here and say, yeah, okay, compensate the mayor some more. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Watson-Felt.
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I appreciate Councilor Harvey's comments. I think I appreciate the spirit of his comments more than the actual words he used. I do have to say, I feel a little bit like we need to be careful about assuming what we know the mayor does or does not do out on the street, because I happen to know that this mayor, just like the mayor before him and most mayors I've ever known in this city, and the one I worked for, middle of the night, drop of a hat, something comes up, they're in the car. That's why they have a car. They're in the car because they're on the street. They're in the woods in the fire. They are with PD. They are with the fire department. They are on site. So I just want to be careful and offer a friendly comment that, I agree that people should be paid a fair wage for their work, hands down. I am a historically very strong union supporter, very supporter of Councilor Cohen's, wage theft ordinance. I am all for fair pay. If there is disparity across the market, then we need to address that. The mayor is a mayor and should be paid like a mayor, and shouldn't necessarily be, although I understand, again, the spirit of the comment is, if there is a disparate, massive gap, right? Let's look at that. Everyone should be paid a living wage, right? That's what we're talking about. I just want to be mindful when we talk about what the mayor does, what the job is, and what the price point comparison for that service is, right? Like, I am not paid as a CEO of a company. I'm paid as a change and communication strategist for a corporation, right? And my compensation is set based on market analysis in our region and my experience, right? Like, that's how it works. So it shouldn't be done differently for someone just because they're a municipal employee. I want everybody to get paid fair. I agree with the sentiment that there are people out there filling holes and they're not making what the mayor's making. Yeah, no kidding, because they're not the mayor. So I just want to be conscious of that rhetoric, because having worked in that office, I know firsthand and having worked for nonprofits in town and having worked and lived here my whole life, that every single mayor that's ever sat in that desk and in that office, and this current mayor not excluding, is on the street. Like, they are on call 24 hours a day. So I'm just offering that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have online Andy Varela, and I also want to acknowledge that there is somebody with a raised hand wanting to give public comment, and please stay on. I will be taking public comment after we complete the conversation with the council. So I just want to make that clear so they don't sign off before I get to them. And let me unmute Councilor Varela.
Thank you, Chair Merkel, not being a member of the committee. I just wanted to not only reinforce my comment, but I appreciate the comment from Councillor Stott. When we discuss this matter, this is about the future of the city of Salem. And as the mayor being a CEO, we want to make sure that that salary is competitive going forward. This is a very important job here in the city to run our municipality. And we want to make sure that that job stays competitive. And I really think that if we start with a 3% increase, that's very reasonable at this time. Again, we haven't raised it in many years, and we're going to have a problem in a couple of years. So again, just reiterating my comment that a 3% increase I feel is reasonable, and we need to get ahead of this because, again, this is about the future, not necessarily what's going to happen in the next couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Varela. Shut that off. I believe Councilor Cohen was next.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Merkel, not being a member of committee, and I promise this will be my last comment, and I appreciate getting a third shot. I think the averages of the median is skewed. I just welcome people to Google Everett Mayor, and you'll find that that person is not just making whatever is on this page, but there's a lawsuit about the extra over $180,000 in compensation. So that skews it. I think Councillor Morcillo really made a good point about how we're really in a place that makes sense. We weren't, 7-8 years ago. Mayor Driscoll was making far less than the competitors. I do appreciate the concept about the corporate world, but there are unions in corporate America, and people who have white collar jobs can collectively bargain and unionize as well. And I just think that this is, the mayor making $154,500 instead of $150,000. And I personally would like to make a statement and say this year, we're just not going to do it because a lot of employees in Salem are going to not get the kind of increases that might require to retain people. We have departments, as Councillor Harvey said, like DPS, that is significantly short of people, and it creates a lot more extra effort by the people who work there, a lot more overtime. But I do want to make one last statement, and that is that the mayor ran for mayor, is not just a manager of a department, is an elected official like we are, and knew what the salary was when took the job. I think our mayor does a great job. I think is a lot of places, and works really hard, and appreciate all the effort. But it's not like didn't know what the compensation was when ran for the job. May be listening to this call, may not be, may want the compensation, may think it's, not the right message. I just don't think that the 3% cost of living increase is going to have as much effect on that position as it would be if it was potentially, as Councilor Marcillo said, put in another place. And that's where I think it should go.
Thank you, Councilor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to reiterate that I wasn't necessarily saying that our mayor doesn't work or doesn't go out there. I mean, I agree, he is out there. But what I am saying is that Councilor Cohen just said, is departments that aren't fully staffed. And when your department's not fully staffed, the people have to work overtime. Well, that's not cost effective either, because now we're paying people overtime instead of just paying somebody a salary to do the job from the get-go. And I just, Councilor Watson felt basically trying to turn it around, saying that I was saying the mayor doesn't do anything. That's not what I was saying. I'm just saying that the money could be spent better elsewhere. Thank you.
Okay, any other councilors? I think I saw Councilor Stott first.
Okay, and I know we have public comment too, so I'll be quick. I think I'll make my final comment on this. I feel like we're really fixed on this year and this year's budget salary, but the one thing that is not shown in this great collection of data is what these other cities' plans are for the future. This is this year's salary. A lot of them are like, like I said, they're not the even numbers. We don't know if that's because they have in their ordinance every year they get a 3% or 5%. We don't know what Beverly's salary is going to be in 3 years. We don't know what the other salaries that were rate in average are going to be in 3 years. And sure, we're in an average spot now. We want to be in that average spot in 3 years. In order to do that, we need to take action tonight. If we take no action tonight, nothing's going to change for 3 years. And I think that's way too stagnant. 150, sure, great salary. A lot of people, you run for mayor, you're not running for CEO. It's a different type of role. That's a very privileged statement. A very privileged statement. The number of people that I've spoken to in the city that are skilled that I think would just take a great stab at the mayor's role would have to take a pay cut, and that's just the reality of it. Which is just interesting. So I do think that we need to stay on top of it. I think it's as simple as that. And I think by making it kind of a mechanical cost of living increase makes it easy and less up and down or jumping as needed. So that's it.
Councilor Watson-Felt.
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I completely agree with Councilor Stott with her comments. I think, we're looking at 5 going on 6 years. I don't know any professional in the working world actively working with a degree and qualifications that we'd be looking for that would stay in a job that hasn't seen a cost of living increase in 6 years. That's just the reality. Similar to the reality of we want qualified candidates to run for this position. We want people to want to serve for sure. Absolutely. But I absolutely agree with Councilor Stott's comments around the privilege of that statement and that this is about the future of our city beyond this mayor, right? We don't know actually that this mayor or any of us will be here. So I think we have to look at it really strategically in that way. And I think a 3% cost of living increase for the first time in 6 years is not unheard of. Thank you.
Yes. Councilor Davis.
I know there's public comment, so I'll just end with I guess I think a budget is a moral document. I think that when we have budget constraints, we know that something has to get cut. I think that there's agreement that a mayor's salary needs to be competitive. I think there's agreement that we need to not be paying 150 employees less than $19 an hour. I think there's an agreement that we should turn Lori Stewart's singular role into an entire department so there can actually be oversight and enforcement when it comes to tenant protections. I think we all in this room would agree with a list of things, right? In a year where the budget makes not all things possible, there has to be a cut somewhere, and I would prefer that to be this rather than the other thing. So I support the sentiment of staying in the average, I think that all makes sense. But yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate the conversation tonight. And also, yes, as a reminder, there's no limit on how many times you raise your hand. This is a committee meeting. And that is why we have these committee meetings, so we can have these great conversations and yes, and take a deep dive. So I appreciate it. Any other comments from the council or questions? No? Okay. Then we do have Steve Kapantis online. Let me just unmute. Steve, are you available to talk now?
Good evening. Good evening. Yes, thank you. Steve Kapantis, Wisteria Street, Salem. I don't think you have all the data to make the decision. You're comparing salaries, and what we need to be comparing is total compensation. So there are other fringe benefits. One was brought up by the Ward 1 councilor regarding the use of a vehicle, but there's other things, the cost of medical insurance, cost of dental, eye, all of the fringe benefits are going to be different from city to city. So to say that our mayor who makes $150,000 compare it to another mayor that makes $150,000, there could be a vast difference between those. And I think for this committee to make an accurate picture of that, you should considering all of the fringe benefits and then see what the market value is. That way you're comparing apples to apples, total compensation. And then the other thing, I want to make a comment about how it's been 6 or 7 years since there's been an increase. I remember that last increase. However, from the perspective of our current mayor, he's only been in this role 2.5 years. So it hasn't been 6 or 7 years since he's received an increase. It's only 2.5. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We also have Aaron Paternoster. Hi, are you on?
Yes, Aaron Paternoster, Ward 3, Delp Street. I just want to say that I have 2 comments. One is, and thanks, Steve, for clarifying that it's been 2.5 years since this mayor's received an increase. I do want to say, however, that inflation has been significant over those 2.5 years. And so my view is that if an increase is not approved, then essentially what's being approved is a pay cut compared to the cost of living. The other comment I want to make is that this is the type of position, it's been said by many councilors before, that this is not necessarily corporate stewardship. This is different. It's public sector. My personal opinion is that this is the kind of work where you want the person executing the work to be, singularly focused on doing the job. And so compensation should be the least of their concerns, especially a job that's as demanding as being the executive of an entire municipality. There aren't really any opportunities to, make up extra compensation just simply because of the commitment of the job. So, as a resident, I'm supportive of making sure that our mayor is able to focus on being mayor and not necessarily, where what his paycheck is going to look like. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I would just like to, hold on, let me turn that down. I would like to check in with Councilor Varela, just in case I'm missing, before we, wrap up comments and questions. If you have any other comments or questions you want to make, I just want to make sure I'm not missing you.
I am good to go. Thank you, Councilor Merkel.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that being said, I don't see anyone else online. Let me turn this back up again. Great. Councilor Stott.
I'm going to take up the school committee one first. That's cool. Okay. For the second order that we have in front of us, I'd like to make a motion that we have reviewed the school committee compensation and we recommend no action.
Councilor Harvey.
I second it.
All those in favor?
We have to vote. Andy's on.
Oh, yes, but he's not a member of the committee. So, yeah, so I believe we can do a hand raise. So let the record show I see 4 hands plus my own. So the recommendation that no action be taken on the review of the school committee compensation, that matter carries 5-0. Councilor Stott?
I'd like to make a second motion related to the school committee matter. I'd like to make a motion that the committee recommends that the second line in the school committee ordinance, section 2-956, compensation of members, that the line starting from during the first 4 months of the city council's biennial organization, the matter of the school committee's compensation shall be reviewed by the city council committee on administration and finance, and a recommendation reported to the city council no later than the first meeting in May. The committee shall recommend the compensation of the school committee member to be for the subsequent 2 final years. Recommend that line be removed, delete it.
Councilor Watson-Feld seconds that the recommendation for the line referring to a regular review for the school committee compensation be stricken from the ordinance. A second by Councilor Watson-Feld. All those in favor? Let the record show I see 4 hands plus my own. This matter carries 5-0. Okay. Councilor Stott.
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I don't have the other ordinance language in front of me and I can't get online, but I would like to make a motion that the mayor's compensation starting the next fiscal year receives a cost of living increase of 3%, and the following year receives a cost of increase of 3%.
Thank you. I just had a question. Would it be the fiscal year or January?
January.
Yeah.
That's the ordinance, I think, right? It starts January.
Yeah, you had said fiscal year. That's why I got...
It's the next fiscal year.
Yeah.
So January of... Well, I mean, it's the next year too.
January 1 of 2026.
In June, so it's January 1, 2027.
I was just looking for some clarity on that. Yes, Councilor. Or are you seconding? No. Okay, Councilor Watson-Feld.
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I am for 3% in year 1. I am not for 3% in year 2 at this time. That's my compromise. Could we amend?
If there's no second on that one, sure.
Do I see a second? No. Okay. Councilor Stott.
I'll amend.
Make a motion. Withdraw that one and make a new motion.
Yeah, I'll keep that motion, just strike the second part of the second increase. So the 3% cost of living increase starting January 1st, 2027, and no increase the following year.
Okay. So it would be January 2027?
Mm-hmm. Fiscal, halfway through fiscal 27. It is fiscal, it's halfway through fiscal 27, yeah.
Okay, so Councilor Stott motions for a 3% cost of living increase for the mayor's compensation starting the next fiscal year. Yeah.
What year is it right now?
Yeah, Anna, if we could have some clarity.
Guys, I'm doing fiscal 2030 planning at my day job. So I am so confused. Okay, so you're right, fiscal 26, not fiscal 27. So January 1st, 2026.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, my dates are all off the place.
FY26.
Yep.
The year in which the
next year, yeah.
June 30th of whatever year that is the title of the fiscal year. So FY26 is June 2026.
So then the increase would be in effect in January of 2026. Okay. Yes. Okay. Excellent. Okay. Do we have a second? Second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Let the record show. I see 3 hands in favor and 2 opposed. So the matter carries. I would like to, before we take another motion, I want to thank Lisa Camarada for coming in tonight and for all the information you provided. It was really really appreciated. The phone calls we've had to educate me on what to bring forth in this meeting, I appreciate it. And of course, as always, Anna Friedman, I want to echo what Councillor Stott said about how fortunate we are. We all read articles about the other municipalities and what Lisa had said about getting information from other cities and towns, and the transparency and the tight ship that is steered by Anna for our finances is very much appreciated. Thank you. Okay, do I have another motion? Councillor Stott?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. All in favor? Okay, this meeting is adjourned.